finally gonna find out if he wants to meet him. After 6 months of texting and sexting and sextupling, I'm gonna finally get my nerve up and ask him. He wants to meet me for coffee. He responded! Wait, what's that blank face emoji mean? Hey guys, it's Girl Who Swirls, Chris Karazin from Beyond Black and White. Dating is a whole new game. A lot of the interactions that when I was out on the prowl dating, they just don't do anymore. We used to talk on the phone for 8 hours. Now people text 24 hours, 7 days a week. People are hooking up on Instagram, on Facebook, having entire relationships through texting, and breaking up, are having relationships, virtual relationships without actually meeting physically. The whole thing is just a little bit weird to me, honestly. It's weird, and it could be just that, you know, this is a millennial thing and I'm Generation X. So I brought in my millennial friend, but he's not a millennial. I think he's Generation Y. But anyway, he's closer to this whole texting thing than me. My good buddy, Jordan Harbinger, who is the co-founder of Art of Charm. I recently had a really cool conversation with him about texting, how much is too much, what you should expect, what he thinks maybe are a little bit too high of expectations. All the things you ever wanted to know in terms of interacting with a guy through text. Let's just face it, it can be confusing, and there's a lot of players and a lot of posers online. And on Beyond Black and White, it's all about efficiency and dating the best man for the job. You gotta cull the herd. So let's find out what Jordan has to say about this whole texting thing. And happy face, smiley face emoji.
Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about like this whole texting thing. You know, I've been obviously out of the game for a long time, and you know, texting has just become this thing where, like, you know, people are, you know, having entire relationships via text and then breaking up via text. And you know, it's a sad situation. I don't even know why, you know, people do it, but I wanted to talk specifically about like texting, how a woman can text a guy that she's interested. Like, say for instance, if it's like an online dating situation, where you're trying to express some interest, but you don't want to be like, you know, putting it all out there because you want the guy to have a little bit of a chase. Like, is there a dance that you dance? Is there like some sort of secret handshake that, you know, women should be doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. And the reason, so there's a couple of things here. One, the texting thing is obviously generational. Like, with plenty of exceptions, if you're over 40 right now, you should probably be calling. But I don't care, right? Like, personally, I don't care. I've definitely, before I met Jen, I remember getting set up with some women, and I'd, like, text them, hey, it's Jordan, when's good for you to chat or meet up? And I remember some chicks, and I say chicks because of whatever, but I was, like, so annoyed by this. They would go back to our mutual friend and be like, he didn't even call. He texted me. What are we, in elementary school? And I was just like, yeah, you seem like an uptight-ass grandma if you're, like, going to not answer my text and not want to go out anymore because I texted you at first. Like, did it ever occur to you that I've worked during the day?
Right.
I'm recording something. So
right.
I texted you. Sorry that you feel, I feel unappreciated. You didn't put in the effort. And I'm like, look, at a certain point, I get that. But at another point, it's like, you've got to be very careful about how you enforce certain types of things that are actually meaningless. Like, look, if a guy's an hour and a half late, yeah, set a boundary. That's not cool.
Right.
But if a guy texts you instead of calling, don't immediately assume, oh, it's because he doesn't value me. What, his time's more important than me? Well, fuck him. That's how you stay single.
Right.
Like, that's how you stay single for 35 extra years.
Right.
And I've seen a lot of that happening where it's like an invisible boundary that a lot of guys just aren't even thinking about. Like maybe the last women he dated only texted, so you got to be careful not to hold that against somebody, and read into it, meaning that frankly he just might not even be there. If he never answers the phone and he only texts, and you've gone out with him 3 or 4 times, like that's a little weird. You might want to bring it up. But
Yeah.
if it's the first time, then frankly you have no right to assume that he owes you that time. Yeah, maybe he is with another girl. So fucking what? Tough
Right.
shit. You're not the only person in his life you've never met.
Right.
So there's a lot of like weird entitlement that I think happens. Some of it's generational, where it's like text is impersonal. No, it isn't. You're being weird because you don't get new culture.
Right.
That's fine, but don't hold it against somebody who does. Maybe
Right.
Maybe his kids text, and that's how he's used to communicating now.
Right.
So rule number 1 is it's generational, but don't read into it. Don't read into meaning that's not there. The other thing is, a lot of people on the flip side of that coin, I realize this sort of flies in the face of what I just said as well, so you'll have to reconcile this in peace, but it has to do with texting is a little bit non-committal. And so I think if you've been texting in the beginning or something like that, that's been fine. But if you've gone out on a date or two and they're never getting on the phone, kind of like we talked about before, or you're not able to meet up, but he keeps texting or she keeps texting, and it's like you're going through all this deep personal stuff on text, that's bad because it's sort of a low commitment way
Right.
to have a relationship, and that's kind of what I think you were hinting at before, where it's like people are going out and they're practically dating on text, and then they break
Right.
up on text. Well, yeah, because if you don't ever have to talk to anyone in real time, you can kind of have like a glorified Yahoo chat
Right.
with somebody, and then you can do that with 10 people at a time. Tell them all about your problems, or listen to their problems, or whatever. And I apologize for the wind, but I can hear you perfectly. It's just I'm outside walking, trying to get some sun.
Okay.
You're telling them all about your problems. You're listening to their problems, and it seems like you have this deep relationship, but you don't know them. You can't hear their voice. You've never met up. Take a deep breath and sort of step back. Let me get away from this guy. And then, ask yourself some questions like, is this a real relationship? Because I think some people who are commitment phobes, they do stuff like, oh, I'm so busy. And it's like, look, if you're texting during the day, yeah, you might be at the office. It might be legit. But what I say is, don't do the rapport building stuff via text or via email. Save that for in person. 1, that's kind of where the magic happens, the in-person stuff.
Mhm.
And 2, if that person, if you meet them in person, you have all the time in the world to talk about real stuff. But if they won't talk about real stuff in person and they'll only do it via text, they might be doing that thing where they're like, well, I don't want to be vulnerable for real, so I'm just going to play vulnerable on the internet or on text.
Right.
And that's bad because that's like an unhealthy pattern.
Mhm.
And the other thing that goes along with this is that there's a lot of times people will do this weird sort of thing where you'll do so much rapport building via text or email that by the time comes to meet up, you're both really scared because it's like you just talked about
Right.
how you got sexually assaulted when you were 15,
Right.
and you talked about how his stepmom was abusive.
Right.
And
You
then it's
sent
like,
him
oh,
dick.
shit.
You sent her dick pics.
Right. And it's like, oh crap, I don't actually want to meet this person now because the fantasy you've built up and the pressure that's there and the rapport that's there, they at some point can then, it's scarier to meet somebody because you just raised the stakes a ton
Right.
by texting and building all that rapport. So that's another reason not to build up that rapport via text, but to do it in person. Because oftentimes, like, men or women will be just freaked out. And they'll be like, I can't face this person. They know everything about me.
Right.
And I
It's
barely know what they
embarrassing.
even look like.
Yeah.
And you're embarrassed.
Mhm.
And sometimes you overshare. You're like, I feel so comfortable because you're staring at your computer screen or your phone.
Right. It
And
is that
it's
layer
like, oh,
of protection.
anonymity, protection.
Mhm.
And so suddenly you've got to then go and meet this person in real life, and you're just like, oh, wait, no. So then they start thinking of excuses, and then it's like, oh, hey, what's going on? And then, of course, they're avoiding you because they know they're being weird about the texting thing and about meeting up. And then suddenly you're never going to meet, and they stop talking to you. And you've you've just wasted your time.
Right.
Not only did you waste your time, but you actually ruined what could have been a good opportunity because you've built up this weird virtual relationship that now they're afraid to pull the trigger on when it comes to meeting face to face. So there's no good to be had by building rapport over text before meeting several times, and they're mismatched. When you're together, the feelings are mismatched. So
when do you cut somebody off when they've gotten to, like, how can you, like, digitally smack somebody on the hand when they overstep? Like, maybe you're trying to, keep the oversharing from, being an issue, and, they'll ask you for pictures. And, usually when they ask you for pictures, it's because they want to see some, part of you that is not in your profile, usually some ass, private part pics or boob pics or whatever. Do you immediately just, cut that person off and keep moving, or is there a way that you can kind of?
I mean, I would say no, because every guy's curious, and some guys have the guts to ask, but it's not because they're like some kind of dog or whatever. It's like, you're only interested in one thing. You hear that from women online, and it's like, no, women catfish like crazy too. So you can go, if you're a guy and you're dating a bunch online, and you're not being like, hey, can I see what you look like? You've met up with some serious dogs or some women that are like, oh, yeah, I'm a dancer. And then you meet them and you're like, no, you're literally 100 pounds overweight. Oh, I used to be a dancer. Oh, I guess I liked dancing.
Right.
Like, you totally got duped. And that happens with alarming regularity. So guys are like, fuck this, my time's valuable too.
Right.
So if a guy's asking you for something like that, it doesn't mean that he's comparing pictures with his friends and high-fiving and, whacking into the shit you're sending him. He might just be going, all right, girl number 8,550, who's probably not who she says she is, let's see what she actually looks like, because we've all been burned. And I barely did it online, and I met up with women. I met up with a girl who forgot to tell me that she was literally a dwarf. Like a midget,
oh, you're kidding.
And I was like, fuck that. And I met up with other people that are like, oh, yeah, I'm Asian, and I'm athletic, and I'm like, okay, cool. And then she comes and picks me up, and I'm like, okay, you're athletic in that you like watching football and eating buckets of chicken, but you're not athletic.
Right.
This is not an athletic build. You are overweight, and you eat like shit. Like,
right.
I could have done what I should have done, and what a lot of guys do who did online is they're just like, yeah, what do you look like? Totally fair. And I think it's shitty that women might be like, oh, I want to know everything about him and how much he makes and how tall he is, but how dare he ask me for a picture that shows my whole body? Sorry, that's not fair.
Right.
Like, it really isn't fair. So you're writing off tons of guys who are not necessarily just trying to bang you, but are trying to protect their time in a very reasonable way. So I'm not saying you have to, like, take topless pictures and send them, but if he's asking you for a picture of you where you're actually pictured, fine. He realizes you're going to send the most flattering photos, but don't be all like, here's me from the neck up. I'm not going to show you my whole body because, look, if you're, Chris, you know this, and I'm just going to call it out. You know this. If you're hot, you're like, here's a picture of me, and it's you with a surfboard at the beach or something, or like kicking it with your friends, you're in a bathing suit, or you're dressed like to the nines, and if you're not, and you got some shame about it, you're like, how dare you ask? No, no, you're not pissed because he asked. You're pissed because now you have to make a choice between hiding your 15 or 60 pounds that you want to hide by being like, here's my facial angle.
Right. When it's like the above, you know what, the angle that fat women love is above the face.
Exactly.
So
we used to call them MySpace angles. Now, of course, we can't call them MySpace angles, but we used to call them MySpace angles because it's them looking up. So it's like, oh my gosh, huge boobs, and look, my face looks angular. No, you're just trying to take advantage of the only perspective in which you don't look overweight. It's such a shitty thing to do. And it's like, look, if you are slightly overweight, own it. Dude, 60% of guys don't give a shit. They don't care.
Right, because they're fat too. No.
Yeah, guys are fat too, or they don't give a shit. Man, they really don't care. Like, they might care for 5 minutes, but then if they're like, oh, this girl's cool. Like, they don't care.
You know what picture I loved? And I loved that Jenny sent you, or I don't know if she sent you or you had it on your phone, but she had a picture doing tripod at the beach in a bikini, which was totally appropriate for the setting. It showed that she was fun, and it showed off her body, and it was just like, to me, that's that encapsulates, if you're hot, you don't have to like be all slutty and everything. Like everything is in context.
Exactly.
Do you know what picture I'm talking about?
I do. I still have it. Yeah, of course. And I think that it's crappy of women, especially doing this, to get offended when they're not offended. They're just pissed that they're now painted into a corner.
Right.
It's not offensive to make sure you're attracted to someone else. Those same women would never put up with a guy who's like, yeah, here's a picture of me, you know, I'm wearing a jersey and I don't give a fuck and I got ketchup stains on it, you know, because I just don't care. This is me. It's real. Women are like, fuck that. You can't even dress up.
Right.
You know, what's your problem?
Right.
But if you're like, hey, what do you look like? Because I want to see if you're actually healthy.
Right.
Oh, how dare you? No, I'm sorry. That's not cool.
Right.
It's not cool. Just because you're ashamed of your body doesn't mean you get the right to hide it from someone. I'm going to find it, after I've spent time coming out to meet you? Well,
right.
That's cool. Yeah, maybe you will make it up with your personality. But honestly, you're trying to deceive me so that you get more of an opportunity to do that? I'm not sure that's cool.